60 The Answer.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios. Only the biggest stories, only the biggest guests, and only the biggest opinions. This is AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. We'll get to this piece that Amber Duke co-authored about the DCA crash momentarily, but she wrote a book about millennials, Marxist millennials taking over the media. So I wanted to get her comment on this wrap-up smear, if you will. The vilification of big balls, part of the Doge team. And then the effort to, I guess it's the effort to sort of ridicule Elon Musk as juvenile for having fun at the D.C. press corps' expense, but who really comes off as juvenile with Dana Bash breathlessly reporting this?
Now, the disruptor-in-chief, Elon Musk, who apparently has adopted the alias, at least he changed his social media handle to Harry Balls, tweeted this morning, "Democracy in America is being destroyed by judicial coup. An activist judge is not..."
Yeah, and Elon was positively delighted that his nom de plume got reported by Dana Bash. So you got your Balls brothers, you got your Big, and you got your Harry. And now you need a Richard. And that is where Gloria Vanderbilt's kid comes in, an unlikely Richard.
Yes,
but he's not actually giving any evidence of that.
It's all going to come, because what they also said was, if we have to go to Congress, we'll go to Congress.
Right, but
we'll show where it is.
Some of the details that have come out, like the $59 million spent on luxury hotels, it's actually not.
You're talking about the FEMA money that was abused for migrants? That was.
Yeah.
FEMA money for migrants, that's okay now?
No, I'm not saying it's okay. I'm not saying it's okay. Don't put words in my mouth.
So would you stop that? Would you stop that process?
Don't be a
Wow. Chris Sununu is the Richard.
Somebody got under somebody's skin, huh?
How about it?
We're in their bands.
So Big, Harry, and Richard. Amber Duke, senior editor at the Daily Caller and author of The Snowflakes Revolt, How Woke Millennials Hijacked American Media. Amber, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Boy, Elon Musk is having fun turning the D.C. press corps into the playpen that it really is.
Yeah, it's hilarious to watch. And I know there's been some people saying, oh, it's immature for these people to have these nicknames or change their names on X. But I'm sorry, the payoff of listening to these self-important CNN and MSNBC anchors have to talk about a quote-unquote constitutional crisis while using the names Big Balls and Harry Balls will never get old for me. I think that's a perfectly fine trade-off.
But they handled it so seriously. I mean, Dana Bash was as serious as a heart attack when she was saying it. She didn't see that she was being played at all.
Exactly. And a part of me wonders if they kind of know what they're doing and maybe they just enjoy the earned media because that's the only way they can get people to talk about them or watch their program with their ratings down. So maybe they're in on the joke a little bit, but at the end of the day, they still look ridiculous.
Well, right, and if this, that's a good insight into what they may be doing. But if they really think that this sort of reporting will, lead the American people to conclude that like Elon Musk is not a serious person or Trump is not a serious person, I mean, that's just not going to work.
Well, the results speak for themselves. The insane government programs that they've been able to uncover, the alleged fraud in the Social Security system with people apparently still receiving Social Security payments at the age of 150. I mean, all of this is an evidence of a lot of competence that's happening with Doge, of the ability to root out this fraud, waste, and abuse in the federal government. So I don't begrudge anyone having a sense of humor or having a little bit of fun as they're undergoing this project, as long as the results are there.
Yeah. I wanted to talk about this piece you co-authored that I mentioned entitled Accident Waiting to Happen over at Daily Caller. The DCA crash from a couple of weeks ago. There was a lot of discussion after that tragic occurrence about the near misses over the years at Reagan National. And now the FAA is moving in the direction of potentially making something that is temporary right now, which is no helicopters flying in the corridor used by commercial flights, commercial airliners, to making that permanent.
That's right. So this report came out of tips from commercial pilots and helicopter pilots, and they directed us to this online program called the Aviation Safety Reporting System. And this is a public but anonymous reporting system that's done in partnership with the FAA, where pilots and air traffic controllers can report incidents that frankly kind of freaked them out a little bit and felt like something needed to be done about it. And we found that between 1988 and 2025, there were 30 near misses between commercial airplanes and helicopters at the DCA airport. And the details of these near misses sounded so eerily similar to what happened with that fatal crash on January 29th. Helicopters flying above altitudes, low visibility, the use of runway 33, air traffic controllers not warning airplanes that the helicopters were in their path until it was potentially too late, and air traffic controllers sometimes launching planes directly in the path of helicopters crossing the Potomac. So this was a known problem for years, and it only took 67 people dying for the FAA to finally do something about it.
Well, what about reports that there was only one air traffic controller in the tower at the time? I mean, for a busy airport like Reagan, that's pretty bad.
Exactly. I mean, DCA Reagan Airport is the busiest in the country, and it also has the shortest runway. So there's a really small margin of error there. And when you have one person who's responsible for all of the air traffic, including communicating with those helicopters, that's a huge burden. And I think it's important to mention that according to the pilots that we spoke to for this article, the military helicopters and the commercial airlines are on different radio frequencies. Oh. So they can hear the air traffic controller talking to the helicopter, but they cannot hear the helicopter talking back. And often that kind of radio traffic is how pilots know that there's a potential conflict coming up. And because they're not able to hear what the helicopter pilot's saying, they don't know if they've confirmed the plane in their sight, if they're changing course. They're entirely reliant on that ATC, who might only be one person, to prevent them from having an airborne conflict.
But we don't know what ATC communicated to the pilot before the crash yet, right? I mean, they've got the black box, but we don't have a transcript of the communications, and that's going to be key to understand if there, we've seen the screen with the two aircrafts, in a collision path with one another, and which unfortunately happened, but we don't know what was going on in terms of the back and forth yet, which is going to be telling.
That is true. What we do know from one of the leaks of audio is that the helicopter supposedly confirmed that they had sight of the airplane, which at that point, the responsibility for avoiding the crash passes over from the air traffic controller to the helicopter. So they would have been responsible at that point. It's one of the other problems is that these radar systems, that these crash avoidance systems that these aircraft use to avoid each other are typically inhibited at low altitudes. And at DCA, it's specifically the landing of planes where these conflicts with helicopters appear to be most frequent.
And it was interesting, too, I mean, per your story on this, that it wasn't one thing. It was, in terms of the incidents over the last 25 years, it was different things that resulted in these near misses that were frightening enough that pilots went to this site to report on them, to share with the airline pilot community and so forth. So it's not like it's a specific pitfall that has to be addressed. It's just sort of the nature of traffic around that airport that needs to be rethought, is what the FAA is concluding.
Right, which is why the FAA's current guidance, as you mentioned, is for helicopters and planes and vice versa to be grounded while the other group is making movements in that area, so that there's just no chance of them coming in contact with one another. But it's true. It's never usually just one thing that leads to a massive safety failure like this. One of the pilots that we spoke to said, we use the Swiss cheese model in the industry. It's a series of failures that all have to line up. And he said, quote, ATC staffing, airspace design, equipment limitations, night conditions, all the holes lined up that night. You plug one hole and everyone goes home to their families.
Wow. And you wrote in your article that there was even a close call with the vice president in 2017. Can you tell us what happened?
Yes, we were quite stunned to see this incident pop up. We learned that the presidential helicopter has always apparently led to ground stops at DCA Airport, but apparently that's not the case for all VIPs. There was a helicopter in May 2017 that was a part of the vice president's fleet. We don't know whether or not Vice President Pence was actually on board during the incident, but we do know that the craft was en route to the Naval Observatory, which is where the vice president lives while they're in office. And both the helicopter and airplane pilot reported an unsafe situation involving VIP movements. And they noted that while they were supposed to be holding airplanes in the sky during this movement, air traffic controllers at DCA had launched 2 departures at the presidential aircraft less than a mile away and directly into their path. So they suggested that one of the things they could do to fix this in the future was to coordinate better between air traffic controllers and VIP movements, but obviously it never should have happened in the first place.
But we talked to a commercial pilot who was also a former military pilot a couple of weeks back, a few days after this crash occurred. And one of the things that he said is that it's not unusual for there to be military operation areas, military airspace areas that are, adjacent or near a commercial airport. He talked about flying in Arizona in particular, where that is routine, and he's not familiar with the sort of number of near misses that, for example, you documented at Reagan over the last 25 years. So, it may not be something that's a system-wide problem, but it's something that just is a problem at Reagan because of the unique dynamics of that airspace and topography and population and so forth.
Yeah, I think that's right. And look, we compared the number of near misses at nearby Dulles National Airport. They only had 5 in the same time period between helicopters and airplanes compared to the 30 that we found at DCA. And a huge part of the problem is that previously helicopters were passing directly underneath airplanes on their landing trajectories, which is why if the helicopter is just, 100, 200 feet above the altitude ceiling, things can go awry pretty quickly. And a lot of airplanes described having to make evasive maneuvers and abort their landings before they had even heard anything from air traffic control. One pilot said at that point it would have been, quote, too late. And another pilot back in 2016, which is right in the headline of the piece, said that the situation at DCA is an ongoing problem and it's an accident waiting to happen. And I think it's very chilling to realize just how prescient his words were.
Amber Duke, senior editor at the Daily Caller, author of the book The Snowflakes Revolt, How Woke Millennials Hijacked American Media. Amber, thanks for joining us again.
Thank you.
Thank you. And she joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Listen to podcasts of Dan and Amy from the AM 560 mobile app. Download it today at 560theanswer.com/mobile.
So how's the separation going? Are you guys able to work things out?
No. I think we're headed for divorce.
That sucks. Going to be an expensive legal battle?
Well, no, that's one thing we agree on, actually. Arbitration.
Arbitration? Like mediation?
Sort of, but better. We'll have a firm decision.
Oh, that's easier. Who's your arbitrator?
Bert Hochberg.
That attorney at Schiller, DeCanto, and Fleck?
Yeah, senior partner. Comes highly recommended.
Are you facing divorce or a family law issue? Burton S. Hochberg offers arbitration services, a dispute resolution process that will save you time, money, and the complexity of litigation. Let Burton hear and resolve your claims with choices that best suit you and yours. To discuss, call Bert directly or